I'm Jake Tapper. We're live at the Ronald Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California for the main event. Round 2 of CNN's presidential debate starts now. The 11 leading Republican candidates for president are at their podiums. They are ready to face off. And if you've been watching this race, you know anything could happen over the next few hours. To viewers who are just joining us, welcome to the Air Force One Pavilion of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. Our thanks to the staff here, and especially to former First Lady Nancy Reagan for this impressive setting with Ronald Reagan's presidential plane as our backdrop. This debate is airing on CNN networks in the United States and around the world. It's also being broadcast on the Salem radio network. I know everyone is very eager to get started, but first, I want to explain the ground rules tonight. My name is Jake Tapper. I'll be the moderator. I will be joined in the questioning by Salem radio network talk show host Hugh Hewitt. He worked in the Reagan administration for 6 years. And by CNN's chief political correspondent, Dana Bash. I will ask follow-up questions. I will attempt to guide the discussion. Candidates, I will try to make sure each of you gets your fair share of questions. You'll have 1 minute to answer and 30 seconds for follow-ups and rebuttals. I'll give you time to respond if you have been singled out for criticism. Our viewers should know that we have timing lights that are visible to the candidates to warn them when their time is up. These 11 Republicans are positioned on the stage based on their ranking in recent national polls. Our goal for this evening is a debate, a true debate, with candidates addressing each other in areas where they differ, where they disagree on policy, on politics, on leadership. Now, let's begin. I'd like to invite each candidate to take 30 seconds to introduce him or herself to our audience. First to you, Senator Paul.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm an eye surgeon from Bowling Green, Kentucky. My wife, Kelly, and I have been married for nearly 25 years, and I spend my days defending the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I think there's nothing more important than understanding that the Constitution restrains government, not the people. Thank you.
I'm Mike Huckabee. I'm delighted to be on this stage with some remarkable fellow Republicans. None of us are a self-professed socialist. None of us on this stage are under investigation for the FBI because we destroyed government records or because we leaked secrets. I know that there are some in the Wall Street to Washington axis of power who speak of all of us contemptuously. But I'm here to say that I think we are, in fact, the A-team. We have some remarkable people. And in fact, not only are we the A-team, we even have our own Mr. T, who doesn't mind saying about others, you're a fool. And I'm delighted to be here with all of these guys and would put any of them in an administration that I led. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Marco Rubio. I'm from Florida. My wife, Jeanette, and I are the proud parent. We've been married 17 years, and we're the proud parents of 4 children, 2 of whom were able to join us here this evening. I'm honored to be here at the Reagan Library, at a place that honors the legacy of a man who inspired not just my interest in public service, but also our love for country. And I'm also aware that California has a drought, and so that's why I made sure I brought my own water.
Senator Cruz?
I'm Ted Cruz. I'm the son of an Irish-Italian mom and a Cuban immigrant dad who fled oppression and came to America seeking freedom. I'm a husband to my best friend, Heidi, who's here tonight. I'm a dad to 2 little girls who are the loves of my life, Caroline and Catherine. If you're fed up with Washington, if you're looking for someone to stand up to career politicians in both parties, I'm the only one on this stage who has done that over and over again. And if we stand together, we can bring America back.
Hi, I'm Ben Carson, and I'm a retired pediatric neurosurgeon. I'm here with my wife, Candy, of 40 years, and 2 of my sons and their wives. I stress the pediatric part of my career because the reason that I've gotten involved in this race is because I'm very concerned about the future of our children. And the direction of our country is one that does not portend well unless we, the people, intervene and retake our rightful place at the pinnacle. And I just want to make it clear that I'm grateful to be here with all of you again, and welcome the addition of Carly Fiorina as well.
I'm Donald Trump. I wrote The Art of the Deal. I say not in a braggadocious way. I've made billions and billions of dollars dealing with people all over the world, and I want to put whatever that talent is to work for this country. So we have great trade deals. We make our country rich again. We make it great again. We build up our military. We take care of our vets. We get rid of Obamacare. And we have a great life all together. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Jeb Bush, and I believe America is on the verge of its greatest century, and I'm ready to lead. I'm a committed conservative reformer that cut taxes, that balanced budgets, that took on the special interests in Florida, and we won. I look forward to talking tonight about how we can fix a broken Washington, D.C., and create an environment where people can rise up again in this great country. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Scott Walker, and Tonette and I want to thank Mrs. Reagan and the Reagan Library for hosting us. You see, in my lifetime, the greatest president was a governor from California. Ronald Reagan knew how to go big and go bold. He understood the essence of moving this country forward, and that's what I did when I took on the status quo in my state and the Washington-based special interest. Now more than ever, America needs a leader who will go big and bold again, someone who's been tested. I'm ready to be that leader. Thank you.
Good evening. My story, from secretary to CEO, is only possible in this nation and proves that every one of us has potential. My husband, Frank, of 30 years, started out driving a tow truck for a family-owned auto body shop. We have come to a pivotal point in our nation's history where this nation's possibilities and potential are being crushed by a government grown so big, so powerful, so inept, so corrupt, and a political class that refuses to do anything about it. I am prepared to lead the resurgence of this great nation.
Oh, I'm John Kasich, the governor of Ohio. Emma and Reese, my children, and Karen, love you girls. Thanks for watching tonight. By the way, I think I actually flew on this plane with Ronald Reagan when I was a congressman, and his goals and mine really pretty much the same. Lift Americans, unify, give hope, grow America, and restore it to that great shining city on a hill. Yes, he was a great one, and I learned much from watching him. The most important thing, hope to Americans, unify, lift everyone in America.
Hi, my name is Christie, and I'd like you to take the camera off me and put it on the audience, because I'd like to ask all of you, how many of you, raise your hand, believe that in today's Barack Obama America, your children will have a better life than you've had? You see, that's why I'm running for president, because leadership is not about me, it's about our country. And what we talk about tonight is not about us, it's about the people in the audience tonight. Because in 7 short years, this president has stripped away their trust and their faith and their belief that the next generation will have a better life. He's stolen that from us, and when I'm president, I'm going to take it back.
Thank you, one and all, for being here. There are many important policy issues facing our nation. We're going to get to many of them tonight, but I do want to start off with some current events in the news and also some of the comments that candidates have recently made on the campaign trail. Ms. Fiorina, I want to start with you. Fellow Republican candidate and Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal has suggested that your party's frontrunner, Mr. Donald Trump, would be dangerous as president. He said he wouldn't want, quote, such a hothead with his finger on the nuclear codes. You as well have raised concerns about Mr. Trump's temperament. You've dismissed him as an entertainer. Would you feel comfortable with Donald Trump's finger on the nuclear codes?
You know, I think Mr. Trump is a wonderful entertainer. He's been terrific at that business. I also think that one of the benefits of a presidential campaign is the character and capability, judgment and temperament of every single one of us is revealed over time and under pressure. All of us will be revealed over time and under pressure. I look forward to a long race.
You didn't answer my question. Would you feel comfortable with Donald Trump's finger on the nuclear codes? It's an issue that one of your fellow candidates has raised.
That's not for me to answer. It is for the voters of this country to answer. And I have a lot of faith in the common sense and good judgment of the voters of the United States of America.
Mr. Trump?
Well, first of all, Rand Paul shouldn't even be on this stage. He's number 11. He's got 1% in the polls, and how he got up here, there's far too many people. Anyway, as far as temperament, and we all know that, as far as temperament, I think I have a great temperament. I built a phenomenal business with incredible, iconic assets, one of the really, truly great real estate businesses. And I may be an entertainer because I've had tremendous success with #1 bestsellers all over the place, with The Apprentice and everything else I've done. But I will tell you this. What I am far and away greater than an entertainer is a businessman, and that's the kind of mindset this country needs to bring it back, because we owe $19 trillion right now, $19 trillion, and you need this kind of thinking to bring our country back. And believe me, my temperament is very good, very calm, but we will be respected outside of this country. We are not respected now.
Mr. Senator Paul, your name has been invoked.
I kind of have to laugh when I think, sounds like a non sequitur. He was asked whether or not he would be capable and it would be in good hands to be in charge of the nuclear weapons, and all of a sudden there's a sideways attack at me. I think that really goes to the judgment. Do we want someone with that kind of character, that kind of careless language to be negotiating with Putin? Do we want someone like that to be negotiating with Iran? I think really there's a sophomoric quality that is entertaining about Mr. Trump. But I am worried. I'm very concerned about having him in charge of the nuclear weapons, because I think his response, his visceral response to attack people on their appearance, short, tall, fat, ugly, my goodness, that happened in junior high. Are we not way above that? And would we not all be worried to have someone like that in charge of the nuclear arsenal?
Mr. Trump?
I never attacked him on his look, and believe me, there's plenty of subject matter right there. That I can tell you.
But Jake,
I want to give Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump, I want to give you another chance. Mr. Trump, I want to give you a chance to respond to something that your rival to your left, Governor Bush, said. Governor Bush told me last week, when I read him the quote from Governor Jindal, that he agrees you're not a serious candidate. Tell Governor Bush why you are a serious candidate and what your qualifications are to be commander-in-chief.
I've actually been in politics all my life, although I've been on that side as opposed to this side. I'm now a politician for about 3 months. Obviously, I'm doing pretty well. I'm #1 in every polls by a lot. But the qualification is that I've dealt with people all over the world, been successful all over the world. Everything I've done virtually has been a tremendous success. When markets changed, when things turned, I heard Governor Pataki, who, by the way, was a failed governor in New York, a very seriously failed. He wouldn't be elected dog catcher right now. I heard what he had to say. And I will tell you this. Atlantic City, I made a tremendous amount of money in Atlantic City. I left 7 years ago. I've gotten great credit for my timing, and that's what I'm all about. I'm a businessman, did really well, and Jeb, what I want to do is put that ability into this country to make our country rich again, and I can do that, and I'm not sure that anybody else in the group will be able to do that.
Governor Bush, would you be comfortable with Donald Trump's finger on the nuclear codes?
I think the voters will make that determination, but what I know to be true is that the next president of the United States is going to have to fix an extraordinarily difficult situation. This administration, with President Obama and Hillary Clinton, has created insecurity, the likes of which we never would have imagined. There's not a place in the world where we're better off today than 6.5 years ago. And that requires a steadiness. That requires an understanding of how the world works. That requires an understanding and appreciation of American leadership in the world. You can't just, talk about this stuff and insult leaders around the world and expect a good result. You have to do this with a steady hand, and I believe I have those skills.
Jake, this is what's wrong with this debate. We're not talking about real issues. And Mr. Trump, we don't need an apprentice in the White House. We don't need an apprentice in the White House. We have one right now. He told us all the things we wanted to hear back in 2008. We don't know who you are or where you're going. We need someone who can actually get the job done. And you talked about business.
Well, in Wisconsin,
let me finish.
excuse me.
No, let me talk about this.
In Wisconsin, you're losing $2.2 billion right now.
You're using
I would do so much better than that.
Mr. Trump, you're using the talking points of the Democrats. And as we all know, that failed 3 times in 4.5 years when I got elected because it is working. We balanced the budget. You want to talk about balanced budgets? You took 4 major projects into bankruptcy over and over and over again. You can't take America into bankruptcy. That's what's wrong with the politicians in Washington right now. They think we can take a country into bankruptcy.
Every major business leader has used I never went bankrupt, by the way, as you know, everybody knows. But out of hundreds of companies, hundreds of deals, I've used the law 4 times, made a tremendous thing. I'm in business. I did a very good job. But I will say this, and people are very, very impressed with what I've done, the business people. But when the folks of Iowa found out the true facts of the job that you've done in Wisconsin, all of a sudden you tubed. He was #1. Now he's number 6 or 7 in the poll. So, look, we brought it out. You were supposed to make $1 billion in the state. You lost 2.2. You have right now a huge budget deficit. That's not a Democratic point. That's a point. That's a fact. And when the people of Iowa found that out, I went to #1, and you went down the tubes.
Governor Walker?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take this on. Because this is an issue that's important in this race. Just because he says it doesn't make it true. The facts are the facts. We bounced a $3.6 billion budget deficit. We did it by cutting taxes $4.7 billion to help working families, family farmers, small business owners, and senior citizens. And it's about time people in America stand up and take note of this. If you want someone who can actually take on the special interest of Washington, which you yourself just said you were part of, using the system, we need somebody who's going to stand up and fight for average Americans to put them back in charge of the government. I'm the one who's taking that on. I'll do that as your next president.
Let's move on.
Jake,
a phenomenon going on in the race right now is that the political... Okay, Governor Kasich, go ahead.
Listen, you know, if I were sitting at home and watching this back and forth, I'd be inclined to turn it off. I mean, people at home want to know, across this country, they want to know what we're going to do to fix this place, how we're going to balance a budget, how we're going to create more economic growth, how we're going to pay down the debt, what we're going to do to strengthen the military. So we've just spent 10 minutes here.
We have a lot of issues coming up,
But
sir.
wait a minute, with a lot of ad hominem. Now, I know that it may be buzzing out there, but I think it's important we get to the issues, because that's what the people want, and they don't want all this fighting.
Well, a phenomenon going on in this race is that the political outsiders in the race, Dr. Carson, Donald Trump, Carly Fiorina, all together have majority support in the polls. Governor Christie, I want to ask you about something that Dr. Carson said the other day. Dr. Carson said campaigning is easier for him because he's not a politician. He can just tell the truth, therefore, while politicians, quote, have their finger in the air to see and do what is politically expedient. Governor Christie, tell Dr. Carson, is that a fair description of you?
Well, I know Ben doesn't think that about me. I'm sure he was talking about one of the other guys, not me. And as far as being an outsider is concerned, let me tell you this, Jake. I am a Republican in New Jersey. I wake up every morning as an outsider. I wake up every morning with a Democratic legislature who's trying to beat my head in and fight me because I'm trying to bring conservative change to a state that needed it desperately. And so everyone can talk up here about their credentials, but the bottom line is every morning I get up, I vetoed 400 bills from a crazy liberal Democratic legislature. Not one of them has been overridden. I vetoed more tax increases than any governor in American history, according to Americans for Tax Reform. What folks want in this country is somebody to go down there and get the job done. And that's exactly what I'll do. So I know this much, that what the American people want to hire right now is somebody who believes in them and believes that they are the ones who can fix our country. I will be the vessel through which they can fix this country. But it's not about me. It's about all of you and getting this government off your back and out of your way and letting you succeed. So I know that Ben wasn't talking about me. Look at him smiling at me right now. I know Ben didn't mean it about me.
Thank you, Governor Christie.
One of these other guys, I'm sure.
Dr. Carson, who were you thinking about on this stage when you said that? And
be honest, Ben.
And more broadly, is experience in government not important for a president to have?
Typically, politicians do things that are politically expedient, and they are looking for whatever their particular goal is. That is not the reason that I have gotten into this thing. I am extraordinarily concerned about the direction of this country, the divisiveness that is going on, the fiscal irresponsibility, the failure to take a leadership position in the world. All of those things will lead to a situation where the next generation will not have a chance that we've had now. So I don't I don't want to really get into describing who's a politician and who's not a politician, but I think the people have kind of made that decision for themselves already and will continue to do so as time goes on.
Thank you, Dr. Carson.
Jake, it wasn't me.
Jake,
I'll
tell you why people are supporting outsiders. It's because you know what happens if someone's been in a system their whole life, they don't know how broken the system is. A fish swims in water, it doesn't know it's water. It's not that politicians are bad people, it's that they've been in that system forever. The truth is 75% of the American people think the government is corrupt. 82% of the American people think these problems that have festered for 50 years in some cases, 25 years in other cases, the border's been insecure for 25 years. 307,000 veterans have died waiting for health care. These things have gone on for so long because no one will challenge the status quo. You know what a leader does? They challenge the status quo, they solve problems that have festered for a long time, and they produce results. That is what my whole life has been about. People know this is about far more than replacing a D with an R. This is about changing the system.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fiorina. Governor Bush, in addition to the fact that he's an outsider, one of the reasons Mr. Trump is a frontrunner, Republican voters say, is because they like the fact that he is not bought and paid for by wealthy donors. Mr. Trump has repeatedly said that the $100 million you've raised for your campaign makes you a puppet for your donors. Are you?
No, absolutely not. People are supporting me because I have a proven record of conservative leadership, where I cut taxes $19 billion over 8 years. We shrunk the state government workforce. We created a climate that led the nation in job growth 7 out of 8 years. We were one of 2 states to go to AAA bond rating. People know that we need principle-centered leadership, a disruptor to go to Washington, D.C. The one guy that had some special interest that I know of that tried to get me to change my views on something that was generous and gave me money was Donald Trump. He wanted casino gambling in Florida.
I didn't want
Yes, you did.
Totally false.
You wanted it, and you didn't get it because I was
it.
opposed to casino gambling before, during, and after. And that's not, I'm not going to be bought by anybody.
I promise, if I wanted it, I would have gotten it.
No way, man.
Believe me.
Nope.
I know my people.
Not even possible.
I know my people.
Is there anything else you want to say about this?
No, I just will tell you that, Jeb made the statement. I'm not only referring to him. A lot of money was raised by a lot of different people that are standing up here. And the donors, the special interests, the lobbyists have very strong power over these people. I'm spending all of my money. I'm not getting any. I turned down so much. I could have right now from special interests and donors, I could have double and triple what he's got. I've turned it down. I've turned down last week $5 million from somebody. So I will tell you, I understand the game. I've been on the other side all of my life, and they have a lot of control over our politicians. And I don't say that favorably, and I'm not sure if there's another system, but I say this, I am not accepting any money from anybody. Nobody has control of me other than the people of this country. I'm going to do the right thing.
You got, according to what you said on one of the talk shows, you got Hillary Clinton to go to your wedding because you gave her money. Maybe it works for Hillary Clinton. It doesn't work for anybody on this stage.
I was a businessman. I got along with Clinton. I got along with everybody. That was my job, to get along with people.
But the simple fact is...
Excuse me. 1 second.
No.
I didn't want to...
Donald, you cannot take...
More energy tonight. I like that. Look.
I was asked the question.
I didn't want... It was my obligation as a businessman, to my family, to my company, to my employees, to get along with all politicians. I got along with all of them, and I did a damn good job in doing it. Go ahead.
So, he supports Pelosi. He supports Schumer. He supports Clinton.
Got along with everybody.
And when he asked Florida to have casino gambling, we said no.
Wrong.
We said no, and that's the simple fact. The simple fact
is... Don't make things up, Jeb.
Don't cut me off,
Come on. Don't make things up.
Jake, can I say something about that?
Sure, Dr. Carson.
When I entered this race, all the political pundits said it's impossible, you can't do it, because you're not connected with the money, and there's no way that you can raise what you need in order to compete successfully. I, in no way, am willing to get in the bed with special interest groups or lick the boots of billionaires. I have said to the people, if they want me to do this, please get involved. And we now have over 500,000 donations, and the money is coming in But the pundits forgot about one thing, and that is the people, and they are really in charge.
Thank you, Dr. Carson. Let's move to Russia, if we could. Russia is sending troops and tanks into Syria right now to prop up a U.S. enemy, Bashar al-Assad. President Obama's incoming top general says, quote, Russia presents the greatest threat to our national security. Mr. Trump, you say you can do business with President Vladimir Putin. You say you will get along, quote, very well. What would you do right now, if you were president, to get the Russians out of Syria?
All right, so number one, they have to respect you. He has absolutely no respect for President Obama. Zero. Syria is a mess. You look at what's going on with ISIS in there. Now think of this. We're fighting ISIS. ISIS wants to fight Syria. Why are we fighting ISIS in Syria? Let them fight each other and pick up the remnants. I would talk to him. I would get along with him. I believe, and I may be wrong, in which case I'd probably have to take a different path, but I would get along with a lot of the world leaders that this country is not getting along with. We don't get along with China. We don't get along with the heads of Mexico. We don't get along with anybody. And yet at the same time, they rip us left and right. They take advantage of us economically and every other way. We get along with nobody. I will get along, I think, with Putin, and I will get along with others, and we will have a much more stable world.
So just to clarify, the only answer I heard to the question I asked is that you would reach out to Vladimir Putin and you would do what?
I believe that I will get along. We will do, between that, Ukraine, all of the other problems, we won't have the kind of problems that our country has right now with Russia and many other nations.
Senator Rubio, you've taken a very different approach to the question of Russia. You've called Vladimir Putin a, quote, gangster. Why would President Rubio's approach be more effective than President Trump's?
Well, first of all, I have an understanding of exactly what it is Russia and Putin are doing, and it's pretty straightforward. He wants to reposition Russia once again as a geopolitical force. He himself said that the destruction of the Soviet Union, the fall of the Soviet Union, was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. And now he's trying to reverse that. He's trying to destroy NATO. And this is what this is a part of. He is exploiting a vacuum that this administration has left in the Middle East. Here's what you're going to see in the next few weeks. The Russians will begin to fly combat missions in that region, not just targeting ISIS, but in order to prop up Assad. He will also then turn to other countries in the region and say, America is no longer a reliable ally, Egypt. America is no longer a reliable ally, Saudi Arabia. Begin to rely on us. What he is doing is he is trying to replace us as the single most important power broker in the Middle East, and this president is allowing it. That is what is happening in the Middle East. That's what's happening with Russia and every region.
I want to bring in Carly Fiorina. Ms. Fiorina.
Having met Vladimir Putin, if I may, having met Vladimir Putin, I wouldn't talk to him at all. We've talked way too much to him. What I would do immediately is begin rebuilding the Sixth Fleet. I would begin rebuilding the missile defense program in Poland. I would conduct regular, aggressive military exercises in the Baltic states. I'd probably send a few thousand more troops into Germany. Vladimir Putin would get the message. By the way, the reason it is so critically important that every one of us know General Soleimani's name is because Russia is in Syria right now because the head of the Quds force traveled to Russia and talked Vladimir Putin into aligning themselves with Iran and Syria to prop up Bashar al-Assad. Russia is a bad actor, but Vladimir Putin is someone we should not talk to because the only way he will stop is to sense strength and resolve on the other side, and we have all of that within our control. We could rebuild the Sixth Fleet. I will. We haven't. We could rebuild the missile defense program. We haven't. I will. We could also, to Senator Rubio's point, give the Egyptians what they've asked for, which is intelligence. We could give the Jordanians what they've asked for, bombs and materiel. We have not supplied it. I will. We could arm the Kurds. They've been asking us for 3 years. All of this is within our control.
Thank you, Ms. Fiorina. While you brought up the subject of General Soleimani of the Quds forces from Iran, the next president, no matter who he or she may be, will inherit President Obama's Iran deal. Senator Cruz, Governor Kasich says that anyone who is promising to rip up the Iran deal on day one, as you have promised to do, is, quote, inexperienced and, quote, playing to a crowd. Respond to Governor Kasich, please.
Well, let me tell you, Jake, the single biggest national security threat facing America right now is the threat of a nuclear Iran. We've seen 6.5 years of President Obama leading from behind. Weakness is provocative, and this Iranian nuclear deal is nothing short of catastrophic. This deal on its face will send over $100 billion to the Ayatollah Khamenei, making the Obama administration the world's leading financier of radical Islamic terrorism. This deal abandons 4 American hostages in Iran, and this deal will only accelerate Iran's acquiring nuclear weapons. You better believe it. If I am elected president on the very first day in office, I will rip to shreds this catastrophic Iranian nuclear deal.
Why is that not, as Governor Kasich says, playing to the crowd and an example of you being inexperienced?
Well, let's be clear when it comes to experience. What President Obama wants to do is he's run to the United Nations, and he wants to use the United Nations to bind the United States and take away our sovereignty. Well, I spent 5.5 years as the Solicitor General of Texas, the lead lawyer for the state in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. And I went in front of the Supreme Court and took on the World Court in the United Nations in a case called Medellin versus Texas, and we won an historic victory saying the World Court in the UN has no power to bind the United States, and no president of the United States, Republican or Democrat, has the authority to give away our sovereignty. And so if there's anyone up here who would be bound by this catastrophic deal with Iran, they're giving up the core responsibility of commander-in-chief. And as president, I would never do that.
Governor Kasich, did Senator Cruz just play to the crowd?
Let me just say this. First of all, I think it's a bad agreement. I would never have done it. But, you know, a lot of our problems in the world today is that we don't have the relationship with our allies. If we want to go everywhere alone, we will not have the strength as if we can rebuild our relationships with our allies. Now, this agreement, we don't know what's going to happen in 18 months. I served on the Defense Committee for 18 years. I've seen lots of issues in foreign affairs and in terms of global politics. You have to be steady. Now, if they cheat, we slap the sanctions back on. If they help Hamas and Hezbollah, we slap the sanctions back on. And if we find out that they may be developing a nuclear weapon, then the military option is on the table. We are stronger when we work with the Western civilization, our friends in Europe, and just doing it on our own, I don't think is the right policy.
Thank you, Governor Kasich. I want to go to Senator Paul. I want to go to Senator Paul. Senator Paul, the White House is rolling out the red carpet next week for the president of China, President Xi. Governor Walker says that President Obama should cancel the state dinner because of China's currency manipulation and because of China's alleged cyber attacks against the United States. Is Governor Walker right?
I think this goes back to essentially what we've been saying for the last 2 or 3 questions. Carly Fiorina also said, we're not going to talk with Putin. Well, think if Reagan had said that during the Cold War. We continued to talk with the Russians throughout the Cold War, which is much more significant than where we are now. Should we continue to talk with Iran? Yes. Should we cut up the agreement immediately? That's absurd. Wouldn't you want to know if they've complied? Now, I'm going to vote against the agreement because I don't think there's significant leverage, but it doesn't mean that I would immediately not look at the agreement and cut it up without looking to see whether Iran is complying. The same goes with China. I don't think we need to be rash. I don't think we need to be reckless. And I think we need to leave lines of communication open. Often we talk about whether we should be engaged in the world or disengaged in the world. And I think this is an example of some who want to isolate us, actually, and not be engaged. We do need to be engaged with Russia. It doesn't mean we give them a free pass or China a free pass. But to be engaged means to continue to talk. We did throughout the Cold War, and it'd be a big mistake not to do it.
Governor Walker, Senator Paul seemed to suggest that canceling the state dinner would be rash and reckless.
No, two parts to that. One on China, one back for a second on Iran. When it comes to China, why would we be giving an official state visit to a country that's been involved in a massive cyber attack against the United States? That's not just a visit. That's a 21-gun salute in the South Lawn of the White House. It just doesn't make any sense. If we're ever going to send a message to them, wouldn't this be the time when they issued this sort of massive attack against us? And Jake, per the question, I was one of the first ones to call for terminating the bad deal with Iran on day one. The president came after me and said, I need to bone up. You know, the president who called ISIS the JV squad said, I need to bone up. The reality is it's a bad deal on day one, and it's a bad deal because this president has allowed Iran to go closer and closer. I'd love to play cards with this guy, because Barack Obama folds on everything with Iran. We need a leader who's going to stand up and actually show some teeth.
Governor Bush, your father was the chief diplomatic envoy to China back when Nixon opened relations to China. Is Scott Walker's approach the right one, canceling the state dinner?
No, I don't think so, but we need to be strong against China. We should use offensive tactics as it relates to cybersecurity to send a deterrent signal to China. There should be stiffer sanctions than what President Obama has proposed. There's many other tools that we have without canceling a dinner. That's not going to change anything, but we can be much stronger as it relates to that. And as it relates to Iran, It's not a strategy to tear up an agreement. A strategy would be, how do we confront Iran? And the first thing that we need to do is to reestablish our commitment to Israel, which has been tattered by this administration, and make sure that they have the most sophisticated weapons to send a signal to Iran that we have Israel's back. If we do that, it's going to create a healthier deterrent effect than anything else I can think of.
I want to turn to Governor Huckabee, who has been very patient. Somebody had to be 11th, and he is. But I do want to change the subject to the event that you had a meeting.
I would certainly love to get in on this.
Well, you can use your minute however you want, but I want to ask this question.
Waiting, and I'm going to just say this about Iran.
All right, sir, go ahead.
Because I think it is incredibly important. This is really about the survival of Western civilization. This is not just a little conflict with a Middle Eastern country that we've just now given over $100 billion to. The equivalent in U.S. terms is $5 trillion. This threatens Israel immediately. This threatens the entire Middle East, but it threatens the United States of America. And we can't treat a nuclear Iranian government as if it is just some government that would like to have some power. This is a government that for 36 years has killed Americans. They've kidnapped Americans. They've maimed Americans. They have sponsored terrorist groups, Hamas and Hezbollah. And they threaten the very essence of Western civilization. To give them this agreement that the president treats like the Magna Carta, but the Iranians treat it like it's toilet paper. And we must simply make it very clear that the next president, one of us on this stage, will absolutely not honor that agreement and will destroy it and will be tough with Iran, because otherwise we put every person in this world in a very dangerous place.
Jake,
okay.
I'd like a
We're going to turn now to Hugh Hewitt from Salem Radio Network.
Thank you, Jake. Mr. Trump, yes. 2 years ago, President Obama drew a red line that the Syrian dictator Bashar Assad crossed. President Obama threatened to strike. He did not. His knees buckled. We now have 4 million refugees. Syria is a living hell. And he turned to the Congress for the authority to back him up. You have 3 senators to your right who said no. Do they bear responsibility for this refugee crisis? And what would you have done when Bashar Assad crossed that line?
Number one, I wouldn't have drawn the line, but once he drew it, he had no choice but to go across. They do bear some responsibility, but I think he probably didn't do it not for that reason. Somehow he just doesn't have courage. There's something missing from our president. Had he crossed the line and really gone in with force and done something to Assad, if he had gone in with tremendous force, you wouldn't have millions of people displaced all over the world.
How much responsibility, Mr. Trump, did the senators hold?
I think they had a responsibility, absolutely. I think we have 3 of them here.
Senator Rubio?
I think they had a responsibility, yes.
Let me tell you, we have zero responsibility, because let's remember what the president said. He said the attack that he was going to conduct was going to be a pinprick. Well, the United States military was not built to conduct pinprick attacks. If the United States military is going to be engaged by a commander-in-chief, it should only be engaged in an endeavor to win. And we're not going to authorize use of force if you're not putting men and women in a position where they can win. And quite frankly, people don't trust this president as commander-in-chief because of that.
Senator Paul.
I think this gets to the point of wisdom on when we should intervene and when we shouldn't. Had we bombed Assad at the time, like President Obama wanted, like Hillary Clinton wanted, and like many Republicans wanted, I think ISIS would be in Damascus today. I think ISIS would be in charge of Syria had we bombed Assad. Sometimes both sides of a civil war are evil, and sometimes intervention makes us less safe. This is the real debate we have to have in the Middle East. Every time we've toppled a secular dictator, we've gotten chaos, the rise of radical Islam, and we're more at risk. So I think we need to think before we act and know that most interventions, if not a lot of them in the Middle East, have actually backfired on us.
Thank you, Senator Paul. I want to turn now to my colleague, Dana Bash.
Hold on a second. Jake, he asked me as well. I'd like to actually
go
get
ahead,
a chance
sir. That would be fair. You're right.
Respond to
You're right. You're the 3rd senator.
I think I'm the 1st senator. The #1 test for use of military force should be the vital national security interest of the United States. The reason why I opposed President Obama bombing Syria is because he couldn't answer the question, what do you do if chemical weapons end up in the hands of radical Islamic terrorists like al-Nusra, like al-Qaeda, like ISIS? Now, I also want to respond to several of the folks up here who said, we should trust this Iranian deal and see if the Iranians will comply. Anyone who's paying attention to what Khamenei says knows that they will not comply. There's a reason Khamenei refers to Israel as the little Satan and America as the great Satan. In the middle of negotiating this treaty, Khamenei led the assembled masses in chanting death to America. I'm reminded of a great editorial cartoon. It shows the Ayatollah Khamenei saying death to all Americans. And then it shows John Kerry coming back saying, can we meet you halfway? We need a commander-in-chief who will stand up and protect this country. And I'll tell you, I can't wait to stand on that debate stage with Hillary Clinton and to make abundantly clear, if you vote for Hillary, you are voting for the Ayatollah Khamenei to possess a nuclear weapon. And if you elect me as president, under no circumstances will a theocratic Ayatollah who chants death to America ever be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon.
Thank you, Senator Cruz.
Jay, we're
going to go to Dana Bash.
No. I want to say something about what the senator just said.
And then
let me suggest to you, we believe that we operate better in the world when our allies work with us. President Bush did it in the Gulf War. We work better when we are unified. Secondly, nobody's trusting Iran. They violate the deal, we put on the sanctions, and we have the high moral ground to talk to our allies in Europe, to get them to go with us. If they don't go with us, we slap the sanctions on anyway. If they fund these radical groups that threaten Israel and all of the West, then we should rip up the deal and put the sanctions back on. And let me make it clear. Let me make it clear. If we think they're getting close to developing a nuclear weapon and we get that information, you better believe that I would do everything in my power as the commander-in-chief to stop them having a nuclear weapon. We can have it, and we can have our allies, and we can be strong as a country, and we can project across this globe with unity, not just doing it alone. That is not what gets us where we want to get as a nation.
Senator Cruz.
Jake, there is no more important topic in 2016 than this topic right here. And I've listened to several folks saying, well, gosh, if they cheat, we'll act. We won't know. Under this agreement, there are several facilities in Iran they designate as military facilities that are off limit altogether. Beyond that, the other facilities, we give them 24 days notice before inspecting them. That is designed to allow them to hide the evidence. And most astonishingly, this agreement trusts the Iranians to inspect themselves. That makes no sense whatsoever. And let me note, President Obama is violating federal law by not handing over the side deals, and we ought to see the United States Congress stand up together and say, hand over this treaty and protect this country.
Thank you, Senator. I want to turn back to Governor Huckabee. Governor Huckabee, last week you held a rally for a county clerk in Kentucky who was jailed for refusing to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples, as I don't need to tell you. You've called what happened to Kim Davis, that clerk, an example of the criminalization of Christianity. There are several people on the stage who disagree with you. Governor Bush, for example, says that that clerk is sworn to uphold the law. Is Governor Bush on the wrong side of the criminalization of Christianity?
No, I don't think he's on the wrong side of such an issue. Jeb is a friend. I'm not up here to fight with Jeb or to fight with anybody else. But I am here to fight for somebody who is a county clerk elected under the Kentucky Constitution that 75% of the people of that state had voted for, that said that marriage was between a man and a woman. The Supreme Court, in a very, very divided decision, decided out of thin air that they were just going to redefine marriage. It's a decision that the other justices in dissent said they didn't have, and there wasn't a constitutional shred of capacity for them to do it. I thought that everybody here passed ninth grade civics. The courts cannot legislate. It's what Roberts said. But heck, it's what we learned in civics. The courts can't make a law. They can interpret one. They can review one. They can't implement it. They can't force it. But here's what happened. Because the courts just decided that something was going to be, and people relinquished it, and the other two branches of government sat by silently, I thought we had three branches of government. They were all equal to each other. We had separation of powers, and we had checks and balances. If the court can just make a decision and we just all surrender to it, we have what Jefferson said was judicial tyranny. The reason that this is a real issue that we need to think about.
Thank you, Governor.
No, let me finish this one thought, Jake. I haven't gotten that much time, so I'm going to take just what little I can here. We made accommodation to the Fort Hood shooter to let him grow a beard. We made accommodations to the detainees at Gitmo. I've been to Gitmo, and I've seen the accommodations that we made to the Muslim detainees who killed Americans. You're telling me that you cannot make an accommodation for an elected Democrat county clerk from Rowan County, Kentucky? What else is it other than the criminalization of her faith and the exaltation of the faith of everyone else who might be a Fort Hood shooter or a detainee at Gitmo?
Well, I'm not telling you that, Governor, but Governor Bush is, because he disagrees. He thinks that Kim Davis swore to uphold the law. You disagree. You're not. You don't believe that?
I think you're not stating my views right.
Okay, please do.
I think there needs to be accommodation for someone acting on their faith. Religious conscience is a first freedom. It's a powerful part of our Bill of Rights. And in a big, tolerant country, we should respect the rule of law, allow people in this country. I was opposed to the decision, but you can't just say, well, gays can't get married now. But this woman, there should be some accommodation for her conscience, just as there should be for people that are florists that don't want to participate in weddings, or bakers. A great country like us should find a way to have accommodations for people so that we can solve this problem in the right way. This should be solved at the local level.
You did,
and so we do agree, Mike.
Well, Governor,
I was
Governor, you said,
by Mr. Tepper here.
Governor, you said, quote, she is sworn to uphold the law.
She is, and so if she, based on conscience, can't sign that marriage license, then there should be someone in her office to be able to do it. And if the law needs to be changed in the state of Kentucky, which is what she's advocating, it should be changed.
Let me go to my colleague Dana Bash, who has a question.
Governor Kasich, Senator Cruz is so committed to stripping federal funds from Planned Parenthood that it could result in shutting down the federal government in just about 2 weeks. Do you agree with Senator Cruz's tactic?
Well, I agree that we should defund Planned Parenthood. I don't know many people in America that don't think that we should. And in my state, we're trying to figure out how to get it done because we are threatened with the federal government taking all of our Medicaid money away. I think there's a way to get this done by giving governors the ability to be able to act to defund Planned Parenthood. But when it comes to closing down the federal government, we got to be very careful about that. When we shut the government down, if we have a chance of success, and it's a great principle, yes, the President of the United States is not going to sign this. And all we're going to do is shut the government down, and then we're going to open it up, and American people are going to shake their heads and say, what's the story with these Republicans? So I think there is a way to get to cutting off the funding for Planned Parenthood. I was in the Congress for 18 years, balanced the budget, cut taxes, got it done, changed welfare, went around the president to get welfare reform done. There are ways to do it without having to shut the government down, but I'm sympathetic to the fact that we don't want this organization to get funding, and the money ought to be reprogrammed for family planning in other organizations that don't support this tactic. But I would not be for shutting the government down because I don't think it's going to work out.
Thank you. Senator Cruz, I would just add that on this stage not that long ago, Senator Graham said that this tactic that you're pushing would tank the Republicans' ability to win in 2016.
Well, let me tell you, Dan, number one, I'm proud to stand for life. These Planned Parenthood videos are horrifying. I would encourage every American to watch these videos. See senior Planned Parenthood officials callously, heartlessly bartering and selling the body parts of human beings. And then ask yourself, are these my values? These are horrifying. On these videos, Planned Parenthood also essentially confesses to multiple felonies. It is a felony with 10 years jail term to sell the body parts of unborn children for profit. That's what these videos show Planned Parenthood doing. Absolutely. We shouldn't be sending $500 million of taxpayer money to funding an ongoing criminal enterprise. And I'll tell you, the fact that Republican leadership in both houses has begun this discussion by preemptively surrendering to Barack Obama and saying, we'll give in because Obama threatens a veto. You know, Obama's committed to his principles, his liberal principles. He will fight for them. He says, I will veto any budget that doesn't fund Planned Parenthood, and Republicans surrender. We need to stop surrendering and start standing for our principles.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. Governor, I want to go to you. Is it what Senator Cruz says, a surrender by Republicans?
No, what I can tell you is this. We didn't surrender in New Jersey 6 years ago as the brand new first ever pro-life governor of New Jersey since Roe versus Wade. I defunded Planned Parenthood, and I've vetoed Planned Parenthood funding now 8 times in New Jersey. Since the day I walked in as governor, Planned Parenthood has not been funded in New Jersey. We've stood up, and every one of those vetoes has been sustained. But here's the problem. We're fighting with each other up here. We agree. Let's ask Hillary Clinton. She believes in the systematic murder of children in the womb to preserve their body parts, Dana, in a way that maximizes their value for sale for profit. It is disgusting, and the American people need to hear it. We shouldn't be fighting with each other. She's the real opponent. She's the real problem.
Governor, the reality is in just 2 weeks' time, we are going to be facing a question about whether or not it's enough to shut down the government to make that statement because there's still a Democrat in the White House. Do you oppose it or support it?
I'll tell you what I'd be willing to fight for. Why haven't we put tax reform on the president's desk? So we could simplify this tax system.
Yes or no,
it's really important, Dana. We got to talk about what we would be willing to shut down for. Why don't we put tax reform on this president's desk and make him veto it if that's what he wants to do? Why haven't we repealed and replaced Obamacare? Make him veto if that's what he wants to do. And why don't we do the same thing with Planned Parenthood? We elected a Republican Congress to do this, and they should be doing it, and they're not, and they're giving the president a pass.
Dana, I'd like
One more time. I'm sorry, I just want to get an answer.
I put it in the list, Dana.
Okay.
We should be doing these things and forcing the president to take action.
So you would
Let's force him to do what he says he's going to do.
Dana,
now, I don't know whether he'll do it or not, but let's force him to do it.
Dana, I'd like to link these two issues, both of which are incredibly important. Iran and Planned Parenthood. One has something to do with the defense of the security of this nation. The other has something to do with the defense of the character of this nation. You have not heard a plan about Iran from any politician up here. Here's my plan. On day one in the Oval Office, I will make 2 phone calls. The first to my good friend Bibi Netanyahu to reassure him we will stand with the state of Israel. The second to the Supreme Leader to tell him that unless and until he opens every military and every nuclear facility to real anytime, anywhere inspections by our people, not his, we, the United States of America, will make it as difficult as possible to move money around the global financial system. We can do that. We don't need anyone's cooperation to do it. And every ally and every adversary we have in this world will know that the United States of America is back in the leadership business, which is how we must stand with our allies. As regards Planned Parenthood, anyone who has watched this videotape, I dare Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama to watch these tapes. Watch a fully formed fetus on the table, its heart beating, its legs kicking, while someone says we have to keep it alive to harvest its brain. This is about the character of our nation. And if we will not stand up and force President Obama to veto this bill, shame on us.
I want to continue on the subject. Governor Bush, you recently said while discussing Planned Parenthood, quote, "You're not sure we need $500 million for women's health issues." Now, you since said that you misspoke. You didn't mean to say women's health issues. But Donald Trump said that quote, that comment, which Hillary Clinton did seize upon immediately, will haunt you the same way Mitt Romney's 47% video haunted him. Tell Donald Trump why he's wrong.
Well, he's wrong on a lot of things, but on this he's wrong because I'm the most pro-life governor on this stage. I got to act on my core beliefs. It's part of who I am. Life is a gift from God, and from beginning to end, we need to respect it and err on the side of life. And so I defunded Planned Parenthood. We created a climate where parental notification took place. We were the only state to fund crisis pregnancy centers with state monies. We were totally focused on this, and I would bring that kind of philosophy to Washington, D.C. So here's a solution to this. Title 10 of the HHS funding, there's something that was called the Reagan Rule. It was passed in 1988. And in that rule, it was defined, and the courts approved this, that a Planned Parenthood, you couldn't separate the money between the actual abortion procedures, and there are 330,000 abortions that take place in this clinic, and their promotion of it. He interpreted it the right way. The courts ruled in his favor, and Planned Parenthood did not get funding during that time until President Clinton came in. When I'm elected president, we will restore that interpretation of Title 10, and this deal will be finished.
Thank you, Governor Bush. Donald Trump, let me just the quote was, I'm not sure we need $500 million for women's health issues. He said he misspoke. You said that that's going to haunt him. Why do you think that?
I think it's a terrible statement. I think it's going to haunt him absolutely. He came back later and he said he misspoke. There was no question because I heard when he said the statement. I was watching and he said the statement and I said, wow, I can't believe it. I will take care of women. I respect women. I will take care of women. One thing we will say, and I would like to get back to the Iran situation. We're talking about Iran. The agreement was terrible. It was incompetent. I've never seen anything like it. One of the worst contracts of any kind I've ever seen. And nobody ever mentions North Korea, where you have this maniac sitting there, and he actually has nuclear weapons, and somebody better start thinking about North Korea and perhaps a couple of other places, but certainly North Korea. And Ted and I have spoken. A lot of us have spoken. We're talking about Iran. They're bad actors. Bad things are going to happen. But in the meantime, you have somebody right now in North Korea who's got nuclear weapons and who is saying almost every other week, I'm ready to use them, and we don't even mention it.
Governor Bush?
There are 13,000 community-based organizations that provide health services to women. 13,000 in this country. I don't believe that Planned Parenthood should get a penny from the federal government. Those organizations should get funding, just as I increased funding when I was governor of the state. That's the way you do this, is you improve the condition for people. And Donald, when I was governor, we also increased the opportunities for women. Women's income grew 3 times faster than national average when I was governor.
So why did you say it? Why did you say it? I know, but why did you say it? I heard it myself. Why did you say
child support. We increased child support.
You said you're going to cut funding for women's health issues. You said it.
I have a proven record.
You said it.
I want to. We're going to get to.
Jake, just one more. There's something bigger to this. Now, I like some of the other governors here. I defunded Planned Parenthood 4.5 years ago in a blue state. But it's bigger than that. We did that in a blue state. We took the money and put it in the women's health. So we did exactly what we're talking about here. But I think the bigger issue here is we should be able to do this nationally. And this is precisely why so many Republicans are upset with Washington. They see the House and they see the Senate and say, why can't we pass this? Why can't we defund Planned Parenthood in a spending bill? Forget about the 60-vote rule. There's no reason, and the Constitution doesn't call for 60 votes. Pass it with 51 votes. Put it on the desk of the president.
Thank you, Governor.
And go forward and actually make a point.
Thank you,
this
Governor.
is why people are upset with Washington.
We're going to get to many of these issues. We're still in the first block, believe it or not. We're going to get to many of these issues. But before we end this block, Ms. Fiorina, I do want to ask you about this. In an interview last week in Rolling Stone magazine, Donald Trump said the following about you, quote, "Look at that face. Would anyone vote for that? Can you imagine that, the face of our next president?" Mr. Trump later said he was talking about your persona, not your appearance. Please feel free to respond what you think about his persona.
You know, it's interesting to me. Mr. Trump said that he heard Mr. Bush very clearly and what Mr. Bush said. I think women all over this country heard very clearly what Mr. Trump said.
I think she's got a beautiful face, and I think she's a beautiful woman.
All right, on that note, in less than 2 minutes, we're going to take a very quick break. In less than 2 minutes, the most contentious issue on the campaign trail, and the candidates on the stage are split over how to handle it. That's coming up next. Please give some applause to the candidates. Welcome to CNN's Republican presidential debate. No topic, perhaps, has been more combustible in this campaign than the issue of immigration. Mr. Trump, you have called for deporting every undocumented immigrant. Governor Christie has said, quote, "There are not enough law enforcement officers, local, county, state, and federal, combined to forcibly deport 11 to 12 million people." Tell Governor Christie how much your plan will cost and how you will get it done.
Correct. First of all, I want to build a wall that works. So important, and it's a big part of it. Second of all,